Good morning, this is your Cherry Peak Ski Report for Friday, March 1st, 2024. We have a mid-mountain base depth of 55 inches with no new snow in the past 24 hours. Roads to the mountain are bare and dry, and the skies are mostly cloudy. Today's operational hours are 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. day skiing and 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. for night skiing. We'll be operating Gateway Triple Chairlift, Vista Triple Chairlift, and the Summit Lift. We'll also be operating the Magic Carpet. This will service tubing and the Bunny Hill. Be sure to complete your digital waiver before arrival for all tubing tickets. Looks like we got some great snow in the forecast, but you know what? It's all about tonight. We're going to be lighting up the sky. It is Star Wars night. Great costumes. Get your costumes together. Come on up. We got our lightsaber relay race and fireworks blasting off the top of the mountain. You don't want to miss it. Go to skicpr.com for all the information and details. We'll catch you at the peak.
News Talk 610 AM, 102.1 FM, KVNU.
The following is a paid program of commercial time on KVNU. The information, offers, and claims are solely those of the sponsor and not the opinions of this station, its affiliates, management, or employees. It's time for the Garden Guide with your host, Mark Anderson from Anderson Seed and Garden.
New research suggests that people are more likely to eat vegetables if they have a tempting name.
What would life be without homegrown tomatoes? Only two things that money can't buy, and that's true love and homegrown tomatoes.
From gardening to landscaping.
Today we are going to try and create garden eyebrows. Kind of like the flowers are sprouting directly from your hair. That makes sense.
Phone lines are open at 753-KVNU or 800-369-KVNU.
Kind of like eating vegetables.
It's the Garden Guide, now on KVNU 610 AM and 102 FM.
And we're back. It seems like just yesterday we were finishing up the show and we said, we'll see you in 2024, and here we are.
It was just a short break.
It was.
Is what it feels like. So.
On the calendar, it looks a lot longer than it actually felt like, that's for sure.
Yeah. But we've had such an amazing winter. It's been so nice. We've got lots of snow, lots of moisture. It's melting down here.
Yeah.
And it's been warm enough that my bees didn't die this winter, so that was good.
Great news. Well, when we were just talking before we started the show, and we put this on the calendar and looked at, that we would start the show, and I thought, it's just not feeling like spring yet. But then last Sunday,
last week,
it felt like spring.
Yeah, it really did. It really did. And then we got some snow, and then we got some more snow coming this weekend. But it is end of February, 1st of March, so that's normal. But
likely won't last long.
No, we don't have like layers of ice underneath. So if we get some snow, it'll melt off really quickly. Where last year it just wouldn't go away.
Yeah, we had it for a long time. And plus also, I saw a report this week from the Utah Division of Water, and they were saying that this year our reservoirs are about double what they were last year.
Yeah.
Last year, their reservoirs were around 48% full.
Yeah.
This year, we're in the 80s.
Yeah, I was going to say 85% is what I saw last time. So that means they're going to have to just release a lot of water to go through. And we'll probably see Great Salt Lake fill up a lot more this year than last year, even though we had more water last year. But snowpack's at like 120% right now. Last I looked, it was 120% for our area. And with this storm, we're supposed to get 1, 2, 3 feet
up in the mountains. Yeah. Oh, it's coming.
1 to 3 feet. So yeah, or we could get some more. Good day to go skiing. Probably Monday.
In fact, what was it? 2 weeks ago, my kids and I were up at Beaver Mountain, and it was just beautiful up there, and a lot of snow up at the resorts. They're enjoying it, and of course, we're loving it down here because it is starting to feel like we can start getting outside and doing some things around the house.
So that's some things we can talk about on the show today because the weather has been cooperative. I went out and looked at my garden, not yesterday, but the day before, and it's just like, a couple dry days, and, I might be able to turn that over and go.
Till it up.
I put a lot of organic matter in last fall too. So I did a nice layer of a composted manure, really well composted. But then we put a lot of leaves and straw and other goodies out there as well too, and tilled that in. And it was a really thick layer. So it's taken all winter for a lot of that to break down. But I looked at it, it's like, okay, it needs another turnover.
Good turnover and mixing it in.
Yeah. But there's some things we can add this spring to kind of boost the garden. And where the weather has been cooperative, boy, we've been out pruning trees like crazy because the weather's been so great. So it's a really good time to prune your trees and get ready to put a dormant spray on. Okay. So we can talk cold crops, we can talk prepping the garden, we can talk pruning, dormant spray, and all those early crops. They're starting to roll in. Like we got our first batch of onion plants in this week. Next week we get our first batch of fruit trees, and strawberries will be coming right behind that. So here we are.
Yeah. Good start.
Here we are.
Start on it, and it's probably a good time too. We can talk a little bit about how to prune. Possibly raspberries.
Yeah,
if you got if you're like us, we didn't really take care of our roses as much as we wanted to this year, and so we're gonna have to do quite a bit of pruning on those this year.
Yeah. My mom's rose bed. We got to do a couple removals. I had a couple of roses that did not do well last year. We'll pull those out, put some new ones in, and this is like the soil's like bare in areas. Great time to put Cazeron down before any activity happens with your berries, like with your blackberries, raspberries, roses, to prevent weeds from coming up throughout the whole season. So this is like prime time before this storm really hits. It would be perfect if you didn't want to deal with weeds for the rest of the spring and most of the summer with the Cazeron. So good time to do that as well too. And the Home and Garden show's coming up. We got to talk about the Home and Garden show.
Yeah, just a few weeks away.
That's not very far off. That is what, the 22nd, 23rd?
Yeah,
it's coming up. So
exciting before we know it.
Exciting, yeah.
So, and we can take your calls. So if you have questions about what to do, get started on this spring gardening season, you can call those in to 753-5868, 1-800-369-5868 for any questions, comments that you have as we start off this new season of the Garden Show. And yeah, I mentioned it. It just felt so great to be outside last weekend, and went out, and our hive as well, Mark, survived through the winter. And I thought for sure those bees would die because they were really mean. We got a really mean batch of bees this year.
Queen.
Oh, every time you would get even within 5 feet of that hive, they were going after you.
They were very protective then. Very
horribly protective.
We've had one of those before, and last year it was so cold through the winter for that extended period in February. We had sub-zero temperatures for like 2 weeks, and my hives were doing well before that, but they were both dead after that. It just froze all their honey, and so they kind of starved. But this year they look great. Yeah, so I'm super excited because we've had to start from scratch the last couple years. Yeah, so this is a good sign, a really good sign. And then I live down by Logan River, and so we're just watching all the water go down Logan River, and it's just like, it's pretty early for runoff. We're just really fortunate that we've got this much water coming out of the canyon already.
Down.
Yeah. So great things in store for spring, and we're excited to get outside and do some planting. I've got some new varieties of peas that we're going to try. So I've got a brand new variety, and I don't have a whole lot, so I've got just a little bit to try out just to see. But it should be a very nice replacement for Victory Freezer, since the old version of Victory Freezer is kind of going out of, I wouldn't say it's out of production, but it's kind of moving that direction. We've got some newer varieties that are going to be replacing some of those. There's still a lot of really great old heirloom varieties around, but some of them they're it's not that they're hard to produce. It's just the growers got to make some money on it, and so if they have 15 varieties that they have to grow, then they got to split it up between them. It makes more sense for them to kind of focus on certain varieties.
One or two.
Yeah, so some of those peas and beans and corn, the varieties are turning over a little bit. We're starting to see some newer ones coming out, and some of these new varieties are exceptional. They're really, really great quality, better taste, more productive, more disease resistant. So we're seeing some changes in some of the seeds. We're seeing some really fun things. We're seeing some really cool pumpkins, different styles, different colors of pumpkins coming out, and just some really cool, fun new varieties. Got a new cantaloupe we're going to try this year as well too, and I'm going to go back to my favorite cucumber. Tasty green.
Okay. Oh, nice. And we actually this year we tried to really take care of our squashes as we pulled them off and make sure they get a really good rind on them before we put them into storage, and we've still got a couple squash left.
They keep really well when you cure them properly. So if you cure properly, then they're going to keep for a really
They've done great
really
in the
long
garage.
time.
You have to have a chainsaw to cut them in half in order to be able to eat them. But
we tell people a hatchet
really
or a sledgehammer. It's like, which one are you going to use, the hatchet or the sledgehammer? Because you don't want to use a big butcher knife because you're going to cut your finger off. They're so hard. Yeah,
very hard.
The skin's so hard. We don't want to do any of that. But the top of the show we mentioned Home and Garden shows coming up, 22nd and 23rd. A lot of really cool things going to be there. There's always great vendors. There's always great food, and of course, Anderson's will be there, and we'll have some different things going this year. We're gonna have a little section of our booth dedicated to the Pumpkin Festival. And yeah. And so we've got some plants. Hopefully, we're gonna have a grower there that grew a 1,500-pound pumpkin, 1,800-pound pumpkin last year. We'll see what happens. Scheduling's kind of tricky this year, but we'll see what we can do. But we will have lots of information on how to grow giant pumpkins.
You want to try it,
and how to participate with the Pumpkin Growers Association if you want to get registered so that you can have a pumpkin to weigh off this fall. And they've got some great categories for kids as well too. So if your kids are interested in growing giant pumpkins, we will have lots of information. You can try and do that. Just be aware, you got to have some space to do it. My plant last year, and we started ours really late, it got about 30 by 30. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it was about 30 by 30. So
30 by 30 feet.
Yeah,
Wow.
That'd
take up
so
half
it took
my
up
garden.
1,000 square feet. Yeah. So plan on dedicating a little bit of space and some time and effort to making that happen. But if you really want to do something fun, it was really cool to watch those pumpkins. And mine weren't that big. I mean, mine only ended up being like 140, 150 pounds. And if you're growing a 500-pound pumpkin, you pull that out of your garden. It's actually pretty cool to see.
Now, how many pumpkins did you actually have on that one plant?
On that one plant, really, if you do it to grow the really big pumpkins, you should thin it to just one.
So
you want just one per
all of its nutrients
I did
into
not
one.
thin them because since we got started late, I just wanted to let them grow and just see what they did without really any extra care, any extra attention. I just let them do their thing, and I got two that were about 150 pounds. Yeah, so it's not that difficult. It's difficult to grow 1,000-pound pumpkin. You got to really put effort into it. But you could grow some really, really big pumpkins. Like that 150-pounder was so big we could barely get it in a wheelbarrow.
Yeah. Well, and I know that was one of the highlights as you look back to last year, the memories and some of the highlight and memorable events of downtown Logan was definitely the Pumpkin Fest was at the top of the list.
That was really cool.
And it blew my mind when we were walking around and I'm seeing these pumpkins and right next to them is a bucket of water.
Yeah.
Because
they were still drinking. They were still drinking water. Yeah,
drinking full 5-gallon buckets of water.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's where they gain all their weight is in that water. But I mean, the size. Last year, our winner was almost 1,800 pounds, and it's like so big it won't fit in the back of a truck.
Yeah. Huge.
So it was a lot of fun. So at the Home and Garden Show, not only will we have our booth there and lots of color, we'll have lots of flowers, and we'll be showing people how to start seeds and is doing a lot of really fun things there at the Home and Garden Show. But we'll have a section dedicated just for the Giant Pumpkin Festival and growing. And if you want to participate, we'll teach you how to do it. I mean, that's what's great about these growers is they're not afraid to share information. They're not afraid to share techniques and how they do things because there's so many things that can go wrong. You can do exactly what the grand prize winner did and still not be successful.
Yeah.
So it's but you can also be really successful if you've never grown a pumpkin before that's big, and all of a sudden you're pulling a 200, 300-pound pumpkin out of your garden. You just go, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen.
It's like rolling the dice. You just never know.
Yeah, you never know what you're going to get. So it's really it depends on your expectations. If you're expecting to grow a 1,500-pound pumpkin the first time, you're probably going to be disappointed.
Yeah.
But if you're just excited to grow something and see how big it gets, then it starts to get really, really fun to see how things happen. So
yeah, I can't imagine a 30 by 30 pumpkin plant taking over your garden.
Yep. Just that was like 3 vines.
Wow.
Yeah. It was really 3 vines that I planted. So not too bad.
So, like we mentioned before, we can take those calls, 753-5868, 1-800-369-5868. We realize that we're getting just to the very beginning. We're on the cusp of the growing season, but there are some things that you can start doing now to be able to help beautify your lawn. And one of the things I was looking at is I was eating breakfast this morning, looking out. Most of my backyard is now completely uncovered.
Yes.
Front yard is about half and half.
Yeah.
Is it okay to start looking at fertilizing?
Yes. Yeah. So I was looking at that this morning myself as well, too, because I'm just the opposite. So front lawn is completely clean. Back lawn has a little bit more shade, so there's a little bit more snow out there. But I was looking at it, I'm going, dang, I should be putting my humate on. Because if you put your humate on right now, it'll melt the rest of the snow off, and then once it gets down into the soil, it encourages activity, so it stimulates activity, gets things going, so it'll wake your lawn up quicker. And not only does it wake the lawn up and get things growing, but it doesn't make it grow really, really fast, so you're not going to have to pull the mower out like instantly to start mowing once that grass gets growing. But the humate, since it's got lots of fulvic and humic acids in there, it starts to break down all the dead stuff that's left over after winter. And so by using the humate, not only will it perk your lawn up and get things growing, but it will actually break down the thatch and the dead grass clippings and all the stuff that's left over from last year, so you don't have to rake your whole lawn.
Leaves and things like that you didn't ever quite get.
Yeah, so easy to do to put that on, and at the same time you can put a fertilizer down, but I will warn you, if you put a fertilizer and humate down by St. Patrick's Day, you're probably going to have to start mowing your lawn. And so we will kind of separate those applications out a little bit. We'll put the humate on first, really kind of get the soil activated and free that nutrient up that's already there, like we put the winterizer on last fall. So this will activate that fertilizer, allow the grass to pick it up and start to utilize it. But then in a couple of weeks, maybe just right after St. Patrick's Day, we will then put our slow-release nitrogen on. It's a little early for a pre-emergent. We like to put our pre-emergent on after the first part of April, so closer to Easter.
Yeah, around Easter.
Yeah,
time.
closer to Easter. Do it after Easter this year because Easter is kind of early. If you put the pre-emergent on too early on the lawn, our target weeds that we're trying to prevent really aren't germinating until the first part of May. And so you get that on in middle of March, it's going to be wearing off in 6 to 8 weeks, middle of May, when it should be at peak effectiveness. And so you don't want to put on too early, or else you're not going to have really great control on, say, spurge or crabgrass or foxtail or goosegrass, a lot of those weedy grasses that we're trying to target with a pre-emergent, because it's going to that preventative herbicide is going to be breaking down and ineffective right at the peak time when that stuff starts to germinate. So don't put on too early. But if you put it on right after Easter, say the second week of April, it will be at peak effectiveness
through the
first
months.
of May. Yeah, the first of May, when those weeds are really starting to germinate. So a lot of gardeners, a lot of homeowners make the mistake of putting their pre-emergent on way too early. And really we want to shoot for about the second week of April, and it will be at prime effectiveness when those weeds really start to germinate. But now it's a really, really great time to put your humate on. Yeah, so it doesn't get any better, because the humate, the acid content that's in there will melt your snow, and it's black, so it generates a lot of heat when the sun comes out, so it'll melt more snow.
Nice.
Yes, and the snow will be gone, and then it gets down in the soil, and it activates the soil, frees up nutrient, and immediately makes that available to the grass to pick it up. And it's great for flower beds, amazing for the garden. It puts lots of minerals and micronutrients back into the garden as well, too. So an early application of that right before you till and right before you plant would be sensational.
I saw last year there was even a few school districts that were dealing with snow still on their fields, and they were trying to get lacrosse and other sports going on. And so they had hired a drone that would load up with humate, fly over the field, and spread that out.
Spread it, yeah, exactly. Yeah, I was trying to figure out why it needed to be a drone, because I can go out there and do that by hand.
Some of us just get lazy.
You don't have to push a spreader. You just do a shoulder spreader. You just walk right over that, and we'll let the drone. The drone can only carry 20 pounds, maybe.
Yeah,
of humate. But it's a cool idea, but it seemed kind of.
That's the new modern age gardener. We haven't got there yet.
That's a cool way to do it, but it might not be the most effective
and efficient way.
Cost effective.
True.
I'm sure.
Well, let's go out to the phone lines and welcome our first caller for this year's Garden Guide. We have Tammy joining us on the line from North Logan. Tammy, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you. I have a couple questions for Mark. The first one is I'm really excited about my asparagus and strawberries that I have companion planted in a raised garden box.
Awesome.
I was wondering what I can do to make those the most successful this year, if there's anything I need to keep pushing them along, and will I be seeing some asparagus we can actually eat this year? I know it takes a while.
Did you
last year?
Did you plant them last year?
Yeah.
And they were roots?
Yep, it started doing some crazy stuff.
So those 2-year-old roots will be old enough this year to produce harvestable asparagus. So I am very excited for you also. Don't harvest anything that is smaller in circumference than, say, your pinky. So we want to let them get bigger, but you can start harvesting this year. So absolutely yes. And this time of year, especially where your beds are probably snow-free, would be an excellent time to throw a little bit of a slow-release fertilizer out there, but something that will move through the soil a little bit. So usually when we're planting asparagus and some of the other root crops, we'll recommend you use bone meal. Bone meal is great, but it doesn't move through the soil very well. So make sure you use a fertilizer that's a little bit more water-soluble, so it will move down into the root zone for your asparagus and for your strawberries with Mother Nature's added moisture. And so there's a lot of really great fertilizers that you can use. Tomato and vegetable, anything for tomatoes and vegetables would be excellent for those. Most of your flower fertilizers would be good too, because they're going to have a little bit higher phosphorus. But go according to directions on the bag, and just broadcast that over those raised beds, and then let Mother Nature water those in. It should be great for the strawberries as well as for the asparagus. Did your strawberries winter over well?
I haven't been up there because there's been so much snow.
I would suspect they will look great, because we didn't have really, really cold temperatures, and they're quite hardy. But with a winter like this, with snow cover, they will have almost been growing underneath the snow since it hasn't been so cold. So.
Wonderful. Can you put pre-emergent in the box too? You
know what? This would be a great time to do that, and the asparagus definitely can handle preen. So the Treflan is the active ingredient of preen, and it is safe to use on the asparagus. And I believe, don't hold me to it, I believe they've added strawberries to that recently. And so you should be okay with the strawberries also, but let's double check the label on that one.
Wonderful. And then my last question is, obviously dahlias are a very hot item right now, and I'm wondering when those are coming in and when we get to wake them up.
It depends on how excited you are about getting those started. But for the ones that you've wintered over from last year, I would do like 1 or 2 gallon size pots, depending on how big your tubers are. And if you want to shoot for getting those outside about Mother's Day, maybe a little bit after that, you could probably start them the middle of March and be successful that way. The ones that we've got coming in from Europe, and I would say they'll probably be here the 3rd or 4th week of March. So a couple more weeks. So we probably got about
Wonderful.
we got about 3 weeks, and those should show up. They consistently show up in the latter part of March. We don't like them to come in too early because then they sit around too long before the weather's really nice enough for people to plant them directly out into their gardens. So, but yeah, with the ones you've wintered over, I would shoot for probably St. Patrick's Day. Would be great. Yeah.
Thanks so much, Mark.
You're welcome. Thanks for being our first caller this year, Tammy.
You betcha.
Thank you.
And that'll free up the phone lines. We can take more calls, 753-5868 or 1-800-369-5868.
It's the bottom of the show already?
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh.
So we've got 30 more minutes. We can take plenty more calls, comments. What are you looking forward to in the new garden season?
We'll talk cold crops. We can get outside and plant the cold crops, and got my fruit trees pruned this week. Yeah. So did some pruning. Very excited to see what my stone fruits do this year, because last year they didn't
do a whole lot.
Anything. Yeah, nothing. So super excited about that. But great time to prune. Great time to start thinking about cold crops. We can hit that on the second half of the hour.
Talk about raspberries and strawberries, and also talk about roses too. So more of the show coming up as we hit 8:30 now on KVNU.
I'm Bill Walter, KVNU News. Utah State back at home Friday night for a late-night game in men's basketball against the Air Force Academy, and it was Utah State with the win, 72-60. Ian Martinez led all scorers. There were 4 Aggie players in double digits. Josh Udije with 11 points, 10 points each for Mason Faltzlev and Darius Brown. With the win, Utah State improves to 24-5. And just a couple games left in the regular season before the Mountain West Conference for the Utah State Aggies. A second professional sports plan that allows an almost certain sales tax hike in Salt Lake City to finance an entertainment and sports zone downtown, anchored by the Utah Jazz and a new potential NHL team, passed the Utah House Thursday evening, though the Senate would need to agree to changes in an SB 272 substitute bill before it's sent to the governor. The 50-20 House vote seemed to seal the drive to keep the Jazz downtown and shoot for professional hockey. Representative John Hawkins, the floor sponsor, said this bill is an effort to restore Salt Lake City to its once and future glory. Of course, also there's Major League Baseball in play. Baseball site is basically dirt, and the area surrounding the Delta Center is locked with development, some of it relatively new. Spokesman for the Miller family and Larry H. Miller Company said they're committing more than $3.5 billion to a new Fair Park district, slated to be home field for a Major League Baseball team. Winter storm warning continues for the mountains. A winter weather advisory and wind advisory for the Cache Valley. Rain changing to snow, 2 to 5 inches expected. For the latest news, visit CacheValleyDaily.com.
From ABC Sports, I'm Mark Remillard. The Celtics continue to scorch all competition, handling the Mavericks 138-110 last night for their 10th straight win. Boston led by 32 points from Jason Tatum, who told ESPN's Cassidy Hubbarth after the game.
We're in a really, really good spot, but we still got a long way to go. But we're playing our best basketball. Hopefully we continue to get better as the playoffs come when it's most important.
In Minnesota, Malik Monk took over down the stretch to lead the visiting Kings past the Timberwolves.
Monk into the front court, accelerates, launches, scores! Another three-pointer for Malik. He's up to 39 points, and the Kings take the advantage, 123-120.
KTHK on the call. Monk finished with a game-high 39 points as the Kings downed the Wolves in overtime, 124-120. Around the associations, the Clippers handled the Wizards in L.A., the Pelicans over the Pacers. The Bucks beat the Bulls, and the Warriors beat the Raptors in Toronto. In the NHL, the Capitals were trailing 2-0 against the Flyers in the second period before going on a 5-goal unanswered run and winning 5-2. The Devils at the Ducks. New Jersey could have tied the game in the final seconds with a penalty shot, but Lucas Dostal was set on preventing that.
Jack Hughes, fans booing. Wide turn to the right, Dostal coming out, Jack Hughes in. He doesn't shoot. Never got the shot away. He never got the shot away. And Dostal with some great aggressive work coming out.
As heard on KLAA, that save sealed a 4-3 win for the Ducks. MLB Hot Stove late last night, the Giants officially signed third baseman Matt Chapman to a 3-year, $54 million deal. Sources confirmed to ESPN. I'm Mark Remillon, ABC Sports.
You know their music. You grew up with their music. And now the Cache Valley Cruising Association is excited to bring them to you live in concert. The Commodores and the Pointer Sisters. Two electrifying bands. One night. The Commodores and the Pointer Sisters. On sale now on the Cache Valley Cruise-In website. That's why I'm easy. The Commodores and the Pointer Sisters, July 5th at this year's Cache Valley Cruise-In. Buy your tickets now on the Cache Valley Cruise-In website. The Commodores and the Pointer Sisters, July 5th at this year's Cache Valley Cruise-In.
It's the Garden Guide on News Talk KVNU, 610 AM and 102.1 FM.
And welcome back to the show on this cloudy with some light rain falling outside the KVNU studios at this hour. And we definitely have a lot more coming our way as a winter storm warning is going into effect this afternoon about noon. And that's going to continue through Sunday as we're expecting to see some measurable snowfall out of this storm coming in. So brace yourself.
Bring it on. That's all I can say. So I just love it when we don't have to whine about water all summer.
And the reality is it's not going to last long.
No, bring it on. So it's raining right now outside. Yeah. So makes me feel like spring.
Yeah.
It really does.
It is.
Yeah, it really
starting
does.
to feel like that.
So and the store is really feeling like spring too. So if you come into Anderson's today, we have onion plants. So you can take them home, get them hydrated, get them ready to plant outside. We have almost all of our seeds are in stock. So all your cold crops could go out as soon as you can get outside and plant. So as soon as your soil is workable, you can plant peas, spinach, lettuce, radishes, onions, cabbage, cauliflower, broccoli, kale. And they can handle all the cold. You know, whether it snows, it blows, it freezes, they can handle it, and they'll germinate at soil temperatures in the 40s. And so, and we get some nice warm days. We could easily have soil temperatures that warm, and your stuff would be popping up like crazy out there in the garden, especially with all this moisture. So this is really nice. We got good soil moisture. We just need it to dry out a little bit so I can get my garden tilled and turned over, because there's a lot of organic matter out there. So lots of straw and compost that we put on last fall, and I looked at it, and there's still quite a bit of straw that didn't break down out there. So I want to get that broken down so I can get planting. We want to get stuff planted.
And there's probably still just a little too much mud out there.
I would be concerned about tilling with the moisture content in the soil right now. I need a week probably of dry weather, just like a week of dry weather, and I could probably make it happen.
Yeah. Especially depending upon, if you're going to do a tiller versus a tractor.
Yeah.
Tractor's going to get stuck.
Yeah.
You won't be able to get it out until June.
Yeah. And it was pretty hefty. We really loaded it up, so we had a lot of compost and a lot of straw and a lot of leaves, and it was time to really build the garden up. And for those of you who don't know how big my garden's about 8,000 square feet, so it takes a lot of compost and a lot of straw to like build that soil up, and we add a little bit every single year, but some years there's more available. There's just more stuff available to work in. And if you don't add all that organic matter, all of a sudden your soil content just decreases. You lose soil every year due to erosion and wind and whatever that might be. The irrigation got loose one day
Yeah.
and washed a bunch of water. I mean, it just happens. And so you've got to add organic matter back into your garden every single year to keep it built up and get some nice new soil content. And then all of a sudden your clay starts to break down. You don't have as much clay. And
that's where I really notice it, is that clay just starts to break up. And it's
so the organic matter, as it decomposes, the particles become smaller than the clay. And so if they're smaller than the clay, they'll actually work between the clay particles that bind up and turn into bricks.
Yeah.
And so the more organic matter you add, the more it breaks that clay up so it can't adhere to itself, because a garden that has some clay content is actually really good. We want that clay content because it helps hold the moisture, so it holds your moisture longer. But if you get too much clay, then it turns into bricks.
Yeah.
And so by adding organic matter, that organic matter will break that clay up, get in between the particles, keep it from clumping together, and then all of a sudden you have this really nice, light, fluffy soil that has a little bit of sand content, has a little bit of silt content, has a little bit of clay content, and so the mixture of those three basic components of your soil with all that organic matter in there as well too, that's what turns your soil into a magic place
and helps the roots just take off.
Yeah, it really does. It really does, especially when you're growing giant pumpkins.
Yes.
So, with your 1,000 square feet of space that you must
one
dedicate
plant
for that. Yeah. So.
Well, let's go back out to the phone. We have Blake joining us on the line from Hyde Park. Blake, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for taking my call. I have a question about peach tree. Last year I had a pest that nearly destroyed my peach tree. It was a little bug that would get in when the leaves were starting to form, and it would take them out. I'm thinking maybe it was a twig borer. How do I take care of that?
Could be twig borer. The peach twig borer usually shows up like well after they've flowered, and so they usually are showing up in like June. And so it may have been just some winter damage. Like all my stone fruits last year, not a single blossom on them. So we didn't have a single blossom, but the leaf buds all came out. So they made it through the winter, which I was very happy to see, because it was cold enough, long enough last winter. I was afraid we're going to lose a lot of stone fruits. We get into the sub-zero temperatures, the low 20s, 20 below, that does a lot of damage to our stone fruit crop here in the valley. We had that for 2 weeks last year. And so it could have just damaged your buds. If you've got parts of the twigs dying back really early, there is a disease that is called bacterial bud blight that gets into most of your stone fruits, and it will cause like the twigs to just die back. But it happens really early. It'll happen right after they're done blooming. And so it could potentially have been that. Let's try and maybe address both of those. With the bud blight disease, the best time to control that really is in the fall. And so we try and spray them in October, right as the leaves are falling off, with a systemic fungicide or a antibacterial fungicide. So you could use like fungicide 5 from Fertilome. You could use F-stop from Fertilome. Both of those would be excellent for that. But you do it right as those leaves are dropping off, because that's when the new buds are forming for the next year. And then we do it again right after we prune in the springtime, before the leaf buds and the flower buds pop open. So just as they're kind of starting to swell, that would probably be the latter part of this month. So make sure and get your pruning done here in the next couple of weeks, whenever the weather allows, and then make sure and do a dormant spray, but mix a antibacterial fungicide in with that dormant spray. So do the fungicide 5 with it, the copper soap or the F-stop, and it will control any insects and diseases that have wintered over from last year and give you a good, clean, fresh start. And then make sure and put on your calendar for this year to do the fungicide dormant spray combination in October, just as the leaves are all dropping off. And that could happen around the 15th to the 30th of October, somewhere around there. So that's good timing for that. For the peach twig borers, those we will spray. Usually the extension, USU Extension, will put a notice out and say, hey, now's the time to do it. It usually happens around the first or middle part of June. And your best options would be any of the synthetic pyrethroid insecticide family. So permethrin, the bifenthrin, the new zeta-cypermethrin. That you've got some really great options, safe to use and use before you're picking the fruit. Very effective on a lot of different insects and very effective on those borers for sure. But our timing is kind of critical depending on what the weather does. So kind of shoot for watching for that around the first part of June.
All right. Thank you.
All right. You're welcome. I hope that helps, Blake. I can't tell for sure which one it is, but it's going to depend on what time it happened last year. So if it was early, and early last year was like May, since last year was such an unusual year. Normally it's like April when we start to see some of that damage happen. But last year was in May. But then the boar showed up later last year as well, too. It was probably the end of June by the time that happened. So,
yeah, I think it was... I found some of the bugs burrowed in where the leaves were coming out.
In the twigs, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
I would definitely recommend the disease prevention because it's way better to prevent it than to get it. It really does a lot of damage to the stone fruits, and all of a sudden, just whole sections of your tree will just die back. So I just try and prevent. So I don't have to deal with it. But with the borers, definitely shoot for that first part of June. You should be in great shape.
Okay. Thanks.
Thanks for calling this morning. Blake, have a great one.
Yeah, you too.
Thank you.
And that opens up the phone line, 753-5868, 1-800-369-5868. Speaking of fruit trees, not only is it a great time to prune, but also to fertilize and start feeding.
Yeah, and I had multiple customers in yesterday that were kind of asking that question too. They're like, I prune my trees every year and spray and do all that, but I haven't fertilized for a while. Should I fertilize my trees? And I was like, yes, yes, because those trees over time, they will deplete the nutrient in the soil around in your orchard, and in that area where all the root system is, they'll gradually deplete that. And so it's very wise to put a general purpose fertilizer out there, something that's very slow release. We want it to break down over a long period of time, but that has micronutrients and minerals in it as well too, because that will enhance the flavor of your fruit. The best way to kind of describe it to people is if you drink water that doesn't have impurities in it, it doesn't taste like anything. It
tastes like water.
It has no flavor. Yeah, it has no flavor. So usually when you drink water and you go, oh, that's the best water I've ever drank, it's because it has minerals and things in it that actually flavor it a little bit. Yeah. And so if you're lacking minerals and micronutrients in your garden, your vegetables will not taste as good because they're lacking that, and they won't perform as well either. And so for the last decade probably, we've been supplementing our garden and our fruit trees with a little bit higher doses of micronutrients and minerals. So with the micros, we're talking iron, boron, copper, manganese, magnesium, zinc. They don't need a lot of it, but they need just a little bit to maintain health. But it will also make your fruits and vegetables taste a lot better as well too. Okay. So we've been supplementing our garden as well too, and our plants are producing more and they're tasting better, and it just makes a big difference. And so to supplement your fruit trees each year, I use a season-long slow release fertilizer that has a lot of minerals and a lot of micros in it, and it just feeds them all year long, and they do great. We pruned quite severely last year, and just so much growth came back because of the fertilizer, and the production on my apples and pears were amazing. Just tons of production.
And do you just cast that out basically underneath the tree?
Right, just underneath the canopy of the tree. Just broadcast that with a little hand broadcaster. Didn't use my drone.
Oh, dang it!
I know. I was had to go out there and do it by hand, the old-fashioned way. But it was a little broadcaster. Just broadcast that underneath my trees, and let Mother Nature water it in. And at the same time, I do an application of the Cazeron, because the Cazeron won't affect the fruit trees. But then in my orchard, I don't have to deal with weeds all summer long, because the Cazeron will prevent new germination and existing weeds for about 6 to 8 months. And so you put that Cazeron down in March, and basically will last until August or September and prevent all those weeds from coming up. So you can use it in fruit trees. You can use it around raspberries and roses and blackberries and grapes. Anything that's got bark on it. So if it's a cane plant like raspberries or grapes or roses, it won't bother the canes. If it's got bark on it, like a peach tree or an apple tree, it won't bother them at all. Or a cherry bush, if you're doing some of the bush cherries. You can use that right in around those plants, and it won't bother those at all, but it basically kills everything else.
Okay.
And it saves so much time and so much effort and so much work, because you don't have to deal with weeds the entire season.
And trying to pull weeds through a raspberry patch.
It's impossible.
Crazy.
Yeah. But with the raspberries, you want to get it on before the raspberries start to emerge. And so you've got to get it on early. So while the weather's like this, and while the soil is like the snow's melting, and the surface is accessible, this is the perfect time to start putting that down, because you want to get on early before your new raspberry shoots start coming up, your new blackberry shoots coming up, and you will see a dramatic decrease in how many weeds you've got to deal with for the rest of the year. Yeah, okay. It really makes a huge difference.
So you were talking about pruning fruit trees, and for people that have been a little hesitant, I know sometimes I go out there and I say, well, what, should I cut it? Should I not?
Yeah.
What's always the best rule of thumb when
there's
kind of a beginner's guide to pruning a fruit tree?
There's a lot of really great information out there, but my basic rules are, first thing you want to look for is dead, damaged, diseased, broken. So anything that's been broken through the winter time, anything that's been damaged, anything that looks diseased, that's the first stuff to come out. Yep. So that comes out first. And you always want to take out the biggest branches first that you think need to go, because you could do a lot of little small trimming on a branch and then finally realize I just got to take the whole thing out. Yeah. So if you take the whole big thing out first, then you just saved yourself 15 or 20 minutes of lots of little detail work.
Cutting.
Yeah, and so I'll look at the tree and go, okay, those three branches are way too close to each other, and they're both kind of pointing in the same direction. So I'm going to pick the best one, and I'm going to get rid of the other two,
and take it out,
and they're gone. And that just saved me half an hour of work, because I would have had to do all the little detail trimming and thinning and header cuts and all that. And so I look for those big things first. So, and that's usually where the dead, damaged, diseased, broken comes in. And then after that, we take out all the water sprouts, and those are the shoots that are shooting straight up. So those are all gone, because that is unproductive wood. It's just growth that the tree kicks out because it's got extra strength, and it's not going to produce any fruit or anything. So those all go. So dead, damaged, disease, broken. Then water sprouts, gone. Then anything that's like crossing over, rubbing up, or just are redundant. So I go in there and I'll look for all that redundant growth and just start taking those out. So if you've got a couple branches that are growing towards each other, and at some point they're going to grow over the top of each other, cross each other, then it's like, okay, which one's going to be the best? And do I need to completely get rid of that branch, or do I just redirect it to go somewhere else? But I'll always kind of open that up, because we want to open the trees up so you get sunlight in there. That's what's going to ripen your fruit, and we don't want it overcrowded, because when those branches get really, really overcrowded, then you're more likely to get diseases and other things that are kind of breeding and spreading in there where the air circulation isn't as good. So we want to open it up to the sunlight. We want to open it up to the air, and allow the Mother Nature to do her thing, and allow those trees to produce fruit. So those are the first three things that I look for. There's some great videos on our website on how to prune. Okay. And so you can go through and you can find those pruning videos and watch those videos. We'll kind of give you a breakdown on the basics. But our fruit growing guide that we have at the store, which is also available on our website for free, but I've got a hard copy in the store if you want to buy it. It has, I don't want to pat myself on the back, but it's the best basic instruction on pruning that we've seen anywhere. Yeah, it gets you to the point where you feel comfortable, to where you can go out and you can prune and not be afraid that you're going to kill your tree
and second guess yourself.
Yeah. And that's really what we're trying to do, is we're trying to just make you feel comfortable and confident enough that you can go out and prune and not go, oh my gosh, I just killed my tree.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's going to come back from minor mistakes. You know, you make a few minor mistakes, it's fine. The tree will recover from it. But our pruning guide has illustrations and it has step-by-step instructions in there, and it shows you all the different parts of the tree so you can identify those parts and figure out which parts need to be removed and which ones you can actually stay. Yeah, and where the fruit's going to be produced. And so it gives you the terminology and the ability to identify the parts of the tree so you can get out there and you can prune and feel comfortable and confident doing that. And then it's got basic instructions on all the different fruit trees. So here's how you prune your apples and your pears compared to your peaches and your nectarines, compared to your apricots and your plums. You know, and so it has some very detailed descriptions and some instructions on how to do those specific trees as well too. But then it has information on all the small fruits. So it shows you how to prune your raspberries, and it shows you how to prune your blackberries, and it shows you how to prune your grapes. And so our fruit growing guide has all this information in it to make you much, much more successful, but more importantly, more confident when you go out and you prune, so you feel like you actually kind of know what you're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's really helpful.
Great time to get out and prune the fruit trees.
Yes.
Now, as we were talking earlier in the show, pruning back roses. If you've noticed that your roses took on some damage during the winter months, which they all do.
Yeah. Yeah. It's about a month too early.
Okay. So hold off on pruning those.
So we always recommend the first weekend of April.
Okay.
To do the roses, because if you prune them now, what happens is they start to grow. It encourages them to grow, so they'll start to bud out and they'll start to get going. Yeah, it jump starts them. And then we could get some really cold weather still in March and then do some damage to the roses. So we don't want to perk those up a little bit too early. And so now's a good time to put the Cazeron on, but I really wouldn't fertilize or prune until the end of this month, first part of April. Yeah, so don't do the roses yet. And there's specific techniques for the roses as well too, which is not in the fruit guide.
Yeah,
the fruit
totally
guide
different.
The fruit guide is all about fruits, so small fruits and large fruits and trees. But roses we're going to wait a little bit, and then our new roses will come in probably the second or third week of April. So right after you prune, and then you go through the roses, you clean them up, and you fertilize them, get them going, and then you look at the roses and you go, that one's not going to make it. You know, it's time for a new rose. Then you yank that one out, and then by then the new roses are in. Yeah, so the new roses are in. So
okay. Well, we've got about 4 minutes left, and you were mentioning earlier that crops are starting to show up at the store, and it is time that you could start looking at some of those early crops.
Onion plants are in. Onion sets should be in next week. Almost 95% of our seeds are here, and I've got a couple of shipments coming in next week. Then we should have like everything. So by the end of next week, all of our seeds should be here. And but bare root fruit trees, our first delivery should be the end of next week, but the trees probably won't be ready until next weekend or right after that, because it takes us a couple days to sort through 1,000 trees and
break them all up,
get them organized and tag them and stuff. So I'm not sure exactly what day they're going to show up, but probably by next weekend they'll be available and ready to go. But that's our first batch. That's not even all of them. That's just the first batch. But then strawberries will be right behind that. And then usually by the second or third week of March, then the grapes and blackberries start showing up. And raspberries are usually towards the end of this month. It just depends on what the weather does with the raspberries, since most of our raspberries are coming local, so they're local plants. So if there's a lot of snow, then it takes longer to get to the raspberries. But hopefully, fingers crossed, we're going to have a much better start to the spring this year than we did last year. Yeah.
Yeah, last year was really tough.
Yeah, so it's exciting. So a lot of that bare root stuff is going to be coming in the next couple of weeks, but I would plan on some of our fruit trees being here probably by next weekend.
Okay.
Yeah. So we got our fingers crossed. Should be exciting. But if the weather cooperates, we can get outside and we can get a lot of this stuff planted, and you can get outside and definitely get your pruning done. Great time to start putting down pre-emergence for flower beds and gardens and especially the Cazeron in the fruit trees, the orchards, and the raspberry beds as well too. Great time to fertilize the lawn. Coming up, St. Patrick's Day is when we kind of say this is the first start. But if you get a chance, you want to melt snow quicker on your garden or in your flower beds or on your lawn, the Humate is my go-to.
Okay.
Yeah, the Humate will break that snow down quicker, and once it gets into the soil, then it does jumpstart your lawn and really get things going. Yeah.
And in the last minute, maybe we ought to talk rodents because a cat in our neighborhood found a vole, and I know they're around.
Haven't seen as much damage this year on the voles
as last year. If you look in our yard out here outside of our studios, we've had a little vole damage as well.
Yeah. So that's when we do want to get out there and rake a little bit and get the Humate on and fertilize and throw a little bit of new seed out there, because it is a good time to start planting grass seed. It's not going to germinate really quickly. It's going to be really slow right now. It's going to be slow, so don't expect it to pop up in a week. But if you want to start getting grass seed out there, I've got some great mixes. I've got an awesome new mix this year. It's called Eden, and it is our drought-tolerant, very aggressive growing grass that will fill in very quickly if it gets some damage. So the Eden's going to be an awesome choice if you want something that's super drought tolerant but still looks really nice. Yeah, it looks really nice.
Well, we'll talk more lawns coming up next week. We thank you for joining us this week on The Garden Guide here on KVNU.